So the finance minister said that this is an aspirational budget. Sir, taking inspiration from the chairman, this is not an aspirational budget, it's a perspirational budget. And I'll tell you why it is a perspirational budget. Because it is based on a series of assumptions. I wish the Honorable Finance Minister luck. If these assumptions hold good, her budget is implemented. But the question we have to ask today, how realistic are these assumptions? In the light of what has happened in the last 2 to 3 years, is the Finance Minister justified in making these assumptions? So she is assuming a growth rate in tax revenues which is not borne out by experience. She is assuming a growth in disinvestment revenues that is not borne out by experience. The entire budget hinges on raising 210,000 crores, 210,000 crores from disinvestment, largely from LIC and IDBI. The budget assumes 133,000 crores as telecom spectrum charges coming to the government. These are all valid assumptions. But the question is, are these realistic assumptions? And based on what we have seen, I think, sir, these assumptions, the finance minister is perfectly justified in making them, but they simply fly in the face of what we have seen in terms of actual practice. This increasing resort to the use of nominal GDP as an indicator worries me, sir, and it should worry the finance minister. We always talk of real GDP, which means GDP adjusted for inflation. But now we are talking of nominal GDP. Sir, you can have 4% real GDP, 8% inflation, and that will be 10%, 12% nominal GDP. But you can also have 8% real, 4% inflation, and 12% nominal. So the question, therefore, is not nominal GDP, but what is the composition of this GDP? And I think there, this budget has left a lot to be desired. The nominal GDP growth amongst the lowest in 42 years, this year, is 7.5%, and the finance minister is assuming that this will increase to 10% in the coming year. I don't see what the basis of that optimistic assumption is. So the basic point I wish to make is the credibility of these assumptions. See, she is assuming a revenue buoyancy of 1.2. She is assuming that income tax rates, GST collections, customs duty collections will increase at 10% and over. But in view of what has happened in recent years, I think these assumptions, again, sir, are very, very unrealistic. So I think it's one thing to have aspirations, but another thing is to predicate those aspirations on assumptions which simply do not have any relation to reality. And this, to my mind, sir, is the single biggest problem with this budget. It is based on assumptions that are simply not valid, which are, they are valid assumptions, but they are not credible or realistic assumptions. Sir, two big ideas in this budget that I want to address. I could see that this budget is based on massive privatization. And I believe, sir, that this is detrimental to the economy in the long run. This is not going to be LIC, this is not going to be Jeevan Bima Nigam, it will be Budget Bima Nigam. And if we are going to start opening the doors of an IPO as far as LIC is concerned, I don't know where we are headed. In any case, sir, LIC, 3 acts have to be amended by both houses, so we will have a debate on the IPO of the LIC, but I wish to draw the attention of the House to the dangerous implications of making a budget dependent on the IPO of the LIC. There is also privatization of BPCL. There is privatization of strategic companies. And I think, sir, this again is a danger call for the government and for the country. So there is absolutely no provisioning in this budget for recapitalization of banks. There is absolutely no mention of how much money the budget will give to recapitalize banks. But we know that the banks need money. Does this mean that the banks are going to go to the market? And I want to say, sir, that privatization can be of two kinds: open privatization and hidden privatization. This is hidden privatization. You are telling the banks, I'm not going to give you money for recapitalization, go and raise it from the market. With the values of the banks being what they are not going to be able to raise it from the market. The only way they can raise it from the market is for government to reduce its equity to below 50%. Is that what the government is proposing? If you want to do it openly. Why this backhanded way of privatizing? So I believe, sir, this entire privatization philosophy of the government is deeply, deeply dangerous and should worry all of us. The second dependence in this budget is on foreign investment. Sir, I am amazed that a party that criticized 1991 reforms for opening the doors to foreign investment is today opening the door even more on the assumption that foreign investment is going to bail out the Indian economy. Sir, no economy in the world, including China, has grown on the strength of foreign investment. It is domestic investment that drives the economy. If domestic investors are unhappy, foreign investors are unlikely to be happy. So FDI, as I have said before, and I don't mind repeating it, FDI should be not foreign, it should be replaced by DI, which is domestic investment. And if the domestic investment is not forthcoming, growth is not going to be forthcoming. Which brings me, sir, to my last point. Why is domestic investment so sluggish? Investments are increasing, but investment rates are not increasing. And if we are aspiring to be a $5 trillion economy, and I hope all those who speak of 5 trillion recognize and remember the number of zeros in that 5 trillion, because I laugh when many people tell me $5 trillion economy. Trillion is not even an Indian concept. Trillion is an American concept. We don't even know, we don't use words like billion and trillion in India, but today 5 trillion is trying to become a household word. I take the government for what it is, but if we are going to be on a $5 trillion economy, sir, we have to raise the level of investment to something like 34 or 35% of GDP. It's now hovering at about 25 or 26% of GDP.